seeing him. And just to mitigate this, I am now proceeding to Badarikashram in the Himalaya for association, as I have been instructed by him. A pure devotee of the Lord, of the standard of Uddhava, constantly associates with the Lord in the double perception of simultaneous separation and meeting. The pure devotee is not, for a moment, unengaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. Execution of the Lord's service is the main occupation of the pure devotee. Uddhava's separation from the Lord was unbearable, and therefore he started to Badarikashram in obedience to the Lord's order, because the order of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical. As long as one is engaged in the execution of the order of the Lord, there is no factual separation from him. As long as one is engaged in the execution of the order of the Lord, there is no factual separation from him. There in Badarikashram, the personality of Godhead, in his incarnation as the sages Nara and Narayan, has been undergoing great penance since time immemorial for the welfare of all amiable living entities. Badarikashram in the Himalayas, the abode of the Narayan sages, is a great place of pilgrimage for the Hindus. Even up to the present, hundreds and thousands of pious Hindus go to pay respects to the incarnation of Godhead, Narayan. It appears that even 5,000 years ago, this holy place was being visited by such a holy being as Uddhava. And even at that time, the place was known to be very, very old. This particular pilgrimage site is very difficult to visit for ordinary men because of its difficult situation in the Himalayas, in a place which is covered by ice almost all year. A few months during the summer season, people can visit this place at great personal inconvenience. There are 4 dhams, or kingdoms of God, which represent the planets of the spiritual sky, which consists of the Brahmajyoti and the Vaikunthas. These are Badarikashram, Rameshwara, Jagannath Puri, and Dwarka. Faithful Hindus still visit all these holy places for perfection of spiritual realization, following in the footsteps of devotees like Uddhava. Banabata Vanchagalbhuja Gribhasne Vacha Patitanam Papanimo Vaishnavi. Hey Bana. Thanks for coming. Hare Krishna.
I got you. Very cool.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bana. Let's give Bana a seat somewhere. What? Really? Should I believe you? Because you've been traveling so much?
Yeah, I'm sitting here playing 20 hours.
Yeah, give him a chair. Give him a chair. Bana, we got a chair for you right there, right there. Go straight. Take a left and a right to the left. Rope swing over that. Give him a chair.
This is a much safer place.
Swami Prabhup's very strong. He's going to put you in the chair. I've seen him do martial arts. He's very powerful. Thanks, Bana. Bana Bhatta Prabhu and I go way back together from San Francisco. He was 1972. I was 1973. And we went on traveling Sankirtan all over the place. And we had the latest technology in the van we got, which was a tape player that could go all the way to the end and then switch and go to the other side without having to turn it over. That was the latest thing. We were a little puffed up because we had that in our van. I was, but I was never puffed up.
In Colombia, in Bogotá, he was doing the Sundararti, the most powerful. All the chariot was jumping to the sea.
Hare Krishna. We're reading from the 3rd canto. We're now at the 4th chapter. Vidura approaches Maitreya. We're up at text 22. There in Bhadarika Ashram, the personality of Godhead in his incarnation, as the sages of 23, right? Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, after hearing from Uddhava all about the annihilation of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of his transcendental knowledge. Vidura was informed that the result of the battle of Kurukshetra was the annihilation of his friends and relatives, as well as the destruction of the Yadu dynasty, and also the passing away of the Lord. All these hurled him into bereavement for the time being, but because he was highly advanced in transcendental knowledge, he was quite competent to pacify himself by enlightenment. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, due to our long association with bodily relationships, bereavement on account of the annihilation of friends and relatives is not at all astonishing, but one has to learn the art of subduing such bereavement with higher transcendental knowledge. The talks between Uddhava and Vidura on the topic of Krishna began at sunset, and Vidura was now further advanced in knowledge due to his association with Uddhava. While Uddhava, the chief and most confidential amongst the devotees of the Lord, was going away, Vidura, in affection and confidence, questioned him. Vidura was much older than Uddhava. By family relationship, Uddhava was a contemporary brother of Krishna's, while Vidura was as elderly as Krishna's father, Vasudeva. But although junior in age, Uddhava was much advanced in the devotional service of the Lord, and therefore he is described herein as the chief amongst the devotees of the Lord. Vidura was confident about this, and thus he addressed Uddhava in that higher category. That is the way of courteous dealings between two devotees. But although junior by age, Uddhava was much advanced in the devotional service of the Lord, and therefore he is described herein as the chief amongst the devotees of the Lord. Vidura was confident about this, and thus he addressed Uddhava in that higher category. That is the way of courteous dealings between two devotees. Vidura said, O Uddhava, because the servants of Viṣṇu, the Lord, wander in the interest of serving others, it is quite fit that you kindly describe the self-knowledge with which you have been enlightened by the Lord himself. Purport. The servants of the Lord are actually the servants of society. They have no interest in human society other than to enlighten it in transcendental knowledge. They are interested in imparting knowledge of the relationship of the living being with the Supreme Lord, the activities in that transcendental relationship, and the ultimate goal of life. That is the real knowledge which can help society achieve the real aim of human welfare. Knowledge in the matter of bodily necessities, of eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing, transformed into various branches of advancement of knowledge, is all temporary. A living being is not the material body, but an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Being, and thus revival of his self-knowledge is essential. Without this knowledge, the human life is baffled. The servants of the Lord, Viṣṇu, are entrusted with this responsible work, and so they wander over the earth and to all other planets in the universe. Thus the knowledge which was received by Uddhava directly from the Lord deserves to be distributed in human society, especially to persons like Vidura, who are highly advanced in devotional service to the Lord. Real transcendental knowledge descends in the disciplic succession from the Lord to Uddhava, from Uddhava to Vidura, and so on. Such supreme transcendental knowledge is not possible to achieve by the process of imperfect speculation as performed by so-called learned mundane wranglers. Vidura was anxious to know from Uddhava that confidential knowledge known as paramamstatam, in which the Lord is known by his transcendental pastimes. Although Vidura was older than Uddhava, he was anxious to become a servant of Uddhava in the transcendental relationship. This formula of transcendental disciplic succession is taught by Lord Chaitanya also. Lord Chaitanya advises that one receive transcendental knowledge from anyone, whether a brahmana or a shudra, a householder or a sannyasi, provided that person is factually conversant with the science of Krishna. A person who knows the science of Krishna is factually a bona fide spiritual master. 26. Sri Uddhava said, "You may take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and who is worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit this mortal world." Purport: although one may be well versed in transcendental science, one should be careful about the offense of maryada vyatikrama, or impertinently surpassing a greater personality. According to scriptural injunction, one should be very careful of transgressing the law of maryada vyatikrama, because by so doing, one loses his duration of life, his opulence, fame, and piety, and the blessings of all the world. To be well versed in the transcendental science necessitates awareness of the techniques of spiritual science. Uddhava, being well aware of all these technicalities of transcendental science, advised Vidura to approach Maitreya Rishi to receive transcendental knowledge. Vidura wanted to accept Uddhava as his spiritual master, but Uddhava did not accept the post because Vidura was as old as Uddhava's father, and therefore Uddhava could not accept him as his disciple, especially when Maitreya was present nearby. The rule is that in the presence of a higher person alone remain. Purport: according to Sri Jiva Goswami, Nidhanam means the transcendental abode of the Lord. Ni means the highest, and Tanam means opulence. And because the abode of the Lord is the highest manifestation of transcendental opulence, his abode can therefore be called Nidhanam. Apart from the grammatical elucidation, the real purpose of the word Nidhanam is to indicate that all the members of the Viṣṇu and Bhoja dynasties were direct associates of the Lord, and after the end of his pastimes, all the associates were dispatched to their respective positions in the transcendental abode. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elucidates the meaning of akritim as pastimes. A means complete, and kritim means transcendental pastimes. Since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there's no question of his changing or quitting his body. To act in accordance with the rules and customs of the material world, the Lord seems to take his birth or leave his body, but the pure devotees of the Lord know well the actual fact. It is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti. It is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti. To others who are not devotees of the Lord, the comments and explanations of such acharyas may appear to be grammatical jugglery, but to the students who are in the line of disciplic succession, the explanations of the great acharyas are quite fit. The word upageteshu, the word upagateshu is also significant. All the members of Viṣṇu and Bhoja directly reached the abode of the Lord. Other devotees do not reach the abode of the Lord directly, but the pure associates of the Lord have no attraction for the opulence of any planets of the material world. Sometimes due to inquisitiveness, devotees who who are to be promoted to the abode of the Lord have some attraction for the opulence of the higher material planets above the earth, and thus they desire to see them while going up to the perfection. Scenic route. But the Vrishnis and Bhojas were directly dispatched because they had no attraction for material planets. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also suggests that according to the Amarakosh dictionary, Akriti also means signal. Lord Krishna ordered Uddhava by signal to go to Badarika Ashram after his departure, and Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back home, back to Godhead, or the abode of the Lord. That was the cause of his remaining alone even after the departure of the Lord from the face of the earth. Now we'll take a few comments or questions. Yes, Mahendra Prabhu.
In a number of places, Prabhupada mentioned in the purports about the influence of karma and jnana, and how this makes it impossible even for devotees who have this mixture to understand the pastimes. And in one particular, in the previous chapter, he says that those who have enthusiasm for fruitive activities and habituation of mental speculation cannot understand or approach the loving pastime. So usually we think, well, that's the karmis and jnanis, these are some other, but how would you comment on that, how this refers to our own lives in practical terms? What's this contamination, this mixture of habituation and enthusiasm?
Sorry, thank you. A few purports ago, Prabhupada mentioned how devotees don't try to figure everything out, but they relish hearing the pastimes. Not just the pastimes, all the teachings of Krishna. And in the Gita, Krishna talks about the Stita Muni, how it's different from regular munis. Munis twist their minds around to try to come up with new ideas, and the Stita Muni attaches him or herself to the order of the Lord, the simple order, and executes it. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmanya navratam. When there's a sense of faith, Shraddha Shabdi Vishwas Kahi Suridhanashoy Krishne Bhakti Koila Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. That means, I know just by doing bhakti, all the other things are taken care of anyway. But your question is, how does it relate to us, right?
Yeah, and how can we notice this mixed enthusiasm for karma or the speculation?
Well, I mean, just on an individual practical level. In the 13th chapter, 20th verse of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada in the purport says it really doesn't matter when, how the living being fell from the spiritual world. He said Krishna knows, but we can't know. It really doesn't matter, he said. So we might notice it in a perpetual desire to scratch the itch to know that, even before we've achieved what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says was Chit Samadhi, where you could understand it directly. But that's a kind of indication, going on and on about topics that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Prabhupada writes himself, others have described as unknowable at a certain point. But going into that ad infinitum could be an indication of something like that. What to speak of taking a stand on it and getting a flag specially made to plant it on other people's heads.
And about karma?
About karma?
Enthusiasm, how does it manifest in mixed devotion?
What's your answer?
I don't know, maybe desire to enjoy facilities or something from bhakti.
Say it again.
Yeah, thank you for explaining it so nicely about it. An example of how we can be habituated to speculation, and one thing is that continuously scratching this itch to know something which is unknowable until we reach this level. And the other was being enthusiastic for enjoying fruitive activities. So how that manifests in mixed devotion. And
on a very practical level, there can be a sense of foregoing preaching for making a lot of money. You could build a facility wherein you think more highly of holding events that make tons of money and eschew book distribution. I'm just trying to give very specific ideas. There could be a sense also of attachment to that idea, whereas a practical way of seeing that the opposite would be elevating the very act of preaching and doing the outreach as the tip of the spear, the most important part, and whatever results come can be managed and put back into preaching. After all, there's a way in which, after the Bhagavad temple was created, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada had noticed a fruitive mentality. The idea of elevationism is really what karma is. I want to get a better situation. So you get a building and then you start thinking, where do I fit in? He said we were better off in Altadunga because there everyone crammed in and they were just happy because they were going out and preaching. So there could be that he saw as a contamination. And those types of things, and also what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta mentions in Prabhupada paraphrases Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in the section of the cleansing of the Gudicha Mandir, and long purport talking about various ways in which impurities sneak into devotional service. And there's kutinati, and there's doing business for the sake of improving devotional service. He gives a long list. And what to speak, we read a purport the other day, mind-blowing purport, where Prabhupada paraphrases Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. It's in the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita regarding Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's going to Vrindavan. And he talks about how everyone has their Mahajans. The demons have their Mahajans, the materialists have their Mahajans. He said, but the Mahajans, the real Mahajans, are the ones that are selflessly engaged in devotional service. So the very fact that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu warned us to be careful not to allow the weeds to stay, and be careful not to water them also. It should be a vigilant gardener to take them out, means that any of those, karma bij, jnana bij, in fact in the Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij verse near the bottom of the page, describing what the bija is, Srila Prabhupada said, if you're accepting this knowledge but you pervert it, instead of getting the Bhakti Lata Bij, you can get the Karma Bij or Jnana Bij. It's a subtlety. So one has to be vigilant to weed out those tendencies. And one of the reason I quoted Shraddha Shade Vishwas Kohi Suridanis Choi, because there's a sense of, in those contaminations, that I need karma in order to do bhakti, or I need jnana in order to do bhakti. Whereas the verse says, one is confident, vishwas, that by doing bhakti everything else comes.
Thank you.
2 minutes left. And actually, 2 minutes left. Go ahead.
So the Yadus they were drinking Varuni. So I had a
They're
question.
drinking what?
Varuni, the liquor. So
Does Varuni come from rice? It comes from honey.
it said Varuni.
This is
in the,
sake.
It
Sake.
says Varuni in the verse.
It says Varuni?
Yeah, it says
Okay.
Varuni in the verse. And also, like the swapachas, it says that if they are devotees, they are actually non-vegetarians, right? They are eating. It says dog eater means they are eating dogs.
It means they come from a family of dog eaters. It doesn't mean they're eating dogs. It means that what those references mean, like Pradvishad Gunayutad Aravindanama Padaravinda Vimukhat Shwapacham Varishtam, etc. That means they come from the category of dog eaters. It means they're devotees, they don't eat dogs. But if they went home for the holidays, their parents would be eating dogs. They're from that category. It doesn't mean they go on eating dogs.
Sometimes it feels like, even like as we see, they were drinking Varuni and still they are devotees. Feels like,
They're Kshatriyas.
Kshatriyas. So
In the Varnashrama, the Kshatriyas get, because of the job they have to do, they get some concessions. And every job, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, has some sort of fault to it. He says, just as fire has smoke, so every job you do in the material world is going to have some fault. Then he names the Brahmanas. He said, well, Brahmanas, they're known to sacrifice animals in yajna, so that's not very good. It's prohibited in this age. Kshatriyas, they have to go and kill people. Besides that, they're such tough guys, they got to cool down sometimes and have a little sake. And then the Vaishyas, they say, for you I make no profit, but that's a lie. That's their main thing in life. Like in Loi Bazaar, if you walk by, they'll go, Haribol? And when you hear Haribol, all of a sudden you think, I should buy 50 dhotis. Because they're so empowered. Just like the yogi meditates on the super soul, the Vaishyas meditate on the rupee. And then they're empowered. And then you get the Shudras who have to work for bad masters. So Krishna says there that, so you have a job, there's going to be some fault in it. And that's the... Yes, Bana?
Can I ask another question?
Okay.
A few verses ago, Prabhupada talked about the offense of Maryada Vyatikrama, or impertinently surpassing greater personality. And it says one has to be very careful of transgressing that law, because by doing so, he says, one loses his duration of life, opulence, fame, piety, and the blessings of all the world. So it seems like a pretty important thing. And of course, Vaishnava etiquette is, that's what I wanted to ask, like how important in our whole spiritual practice is Vaishnava etiquette and adhering to principles like this.
Well, I always notice it when I go to a community where Vaishnava etiquette has been inculcated. You feel that I feel that the environment is spiritually surcharged, because mercy flows through that sense of servant of the servant of the servant, and the sense of humility and so forth. And we just heard earlier, the subtleties of it are so important. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Vaishnava etiquette is the ornament of the Vaishnava. And tadvidi pranipatena, the idea that knowledge, it's not just from a machine, it comes from the heart of the person you're learning from. If I approach somebody in a demanding way or in a condescending way, then it doesn't flow. And respecting Vaishnavas and being careful not to disrespect them came up because it came up in the section where the younger Yadus went in, offended Narada Muni. There was a whole group of sages, and they went and perpetrated this farce. Was it Samba? They stuffed some things under his shirt, and they went in there, and he dressed up like a girl. And they said, oh, this fair maiden is going to give birth. What do you think it's going to be, a boy or a girl? And then, on behalf of the sages, Narada said, it'll be a lump of iron that will destroy your whole dynasty. And then they sobered up. They went home. Urgusena even was so afraid of it. He said, they looked under, and there was that iron lump. So he said, grind it up. He should have taken it to Krishna, but he didn't. They'd grind it up. They ground it to powder. They threw it there, which in Prabhasa later became those iron rods in the form of the bamboo sticks. And then the piece that wouldn't grind down, they threw into the water, and that was recovered. And Jara, who shot Krishna with an arrow, that became the arrow tip for his arrow. What question am I answering? I forgot. Yeah, how did I get into this? Yeah, so in that section where the young boys had gone in a frivolous mood in front of these Paramahamsa Vaishnavas, and they became angry, and look at it, destroyed their whole dynasty. So Prabhupada said at the end of the purport, remember? It's right, the last sentence of the purport. He said, so we shouldn't, I'm paraphrasing, but what is it? Yeah, you should be very careful. Huh? Careful and respectful. Shouldn't take it lightly. So it's the most important thing. If you see somebody that's very... No one should behave lightly with Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. And it's in context of what we just talked about. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Lakshmana Shringadev, if you so desire, please enlighten our hearts so that we never treat Brahmins or Vaishnavas lightly. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part? Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Panchakalptarishcha kripasanabheva chapatitanam pavanivyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. The Govardhana choir